Hey everyone, George here. Today I just wanted to sit down for a moment and talk to you about the 2025 horror movie Good Boy. This is the feature directorial debut of Ben Leonberg, and this film was written by Ben Leonberg and Alex Cannon. This film stars Shane Jensen, Ariel Friedman, Larry Fessenden, Stuart Rudin, and of course, Indy the dog, who, of course, is the star of the show. He is the good boy. With that out of the way, let me tell you what this film is about. This movie follows a loyal dog named Indy, where him and his owner Todd move back into their rural family home, and they encounter a dark supernatural entity while there. Now, what makes this movie unique is that it stars a dog. It stars Indy. Not only that, the film shows everything through his point of view. So the camera is often low to the ground, and there are many long shots with shallow focal depth, and all you're doing is just like seeing this dog sniffing around this spooky home most of the time. And that may sound a little weird and may sound boring, but it's not. It may be weird, but it's certainly not boring. It's a very entertaining little film. So yeah, this novel approach of having a dog star in this movie really does work well. You get to see a haunted house story in a new way. You know, this main character is a dog, so if he hears a strange noise somewhere in the home, he won't just be too scared to check it out. He'll jump right up, run to the source, and start sniffing around this dark and spooky corner of the house. Also, another thing is, if he does feel like he's being watched in this movie, you know, he'll walk right up to that doorway and just growl into the dark hallway that's in front of him. Rather than like in other horror movies, they'll just like hide under their blankets. You know, it comes off silly a lot of times when that happens in movies, but that actually does happen a lot in films where it's like a haunted house story and then they just hide under their sheets. But this is not the case in this movie because it's a dog, so he can't do that. And his idea of fear is different because he's a dog. So he'll just, you know, go right up and just growl and sniff around and check things out. So like I said, you are watching this haunted house, like a traditional haunted house story, play out in a very, very different way. And honestly, that is why I did find this movie so scary. Because like I was saying, there'll be like a strange sound somewhere in the house. And normally the main character would go out, cautiously check what that sound is in the home. You know, he'll turn on the lights, and if for whatever weird reason, like the story has it where there's no power or something like that, you know, he'll grab a lantern or a flashlight and move around. But, you know, you're following the main character, Indy, who's a dog, so he can't turn on the lights, he can't hold a flashlight. So he's actually like just walking through these dark hallways and these dark rooms, just sniffing around. And honestly, as Indy does this, you're basically locked into this experience. Imagine you're on like a scary ride where it's like a roller coaster or something like that, and you're locked in. There's nothing you can do. All you can do is just move in the direction that this ride is taking you in, and that's what this movie does, is the dog is going over there. The camera's not going to just stand in one place, be static, and see the dog go off into the distance. The camera is going to follow Indy very closely as he moves through this house. So if there's like a noise down in the basement, you better believe it, that the dog will go and the camera will follow Indy as he goes all the way down into the basement and check out areas of the basement where you really, really don't want to go to. But you kind of have to, because that's where the camera's going, because that's where the dog is going. Also, because the movie follows the dog as it's encountering this big spooky home, all the human characters in this movie are secondary. So you don't see the owner Todd's face really well at all. You know, it's really hard to make out his face. It's always obscured. And honestly, you don't see anyone's face too clearly in this movie. The other thing is because the humans in this movie are secondary, I feel like the dialogue in this movie is secondary. You know, I don't feel like the dialogue in this movie was real dialogue. I felt like it was just expositional information for you to understand what's going on. And it also was delivered very stiffly. It was rather stiff, the acting at times in this movie when they were saying these lines. Okay, this is going to be like a really weird analogy, but I feel like the dialogue and the delivery of the dialogue in this movie felt like the way dialogue and acting was done in like 80s cartoons. Like picture He-Man or Thundercats, where like everything they said was just very stiff and it was all expositional, where it was just like clear as day. Like you didn't have to use your brain. It was just spelling everything out for you. And I feel like that's what happened in this movie. Was the dialogue was super stiff, the delivery was stiff at times, not always, but it was stiff at times. And like the dialogue was just like, boom, boom, boom. This is the information right here. And, you know, I wish it didn't do that. I wish the dialogue felt more natural. I wish the delivery felt more natural. And I would be okay if they didn't spell certain things out for me in this movie. I really think it would have been a more fun, cooler experience if it wouldn't be as expositional, the dialogue in this film. But even though I really didn't like the dialogue in this movie, I will say this about the film, which I actually really enjoyed. I will say this about the movie, is that from beginning to end, this movie was like super eerie. It was just like super gloomy, super eerie film. In fact, there was like, from beginning to end, there was just like great, just great sense of dread throughout the entire film. And, okay, I know that the, this term, like, oh, there was this great sense of dread. Like, everyone throws this around in when they talk about horror movies nowadays. Like, they say, oh, there was this feeling of dread in this movie. Oh, this movie felt just a feeling of dread throughout the entire film. I understand that, and that is a term that's, like, thrown around a lot nowadays. But that term, that this movie had a feeling of dread throughout the entire film, perfectly describes this movie, because this movie did really have a feeling of dread from beginning to end. I stand by this statement that this movie had a feeling of dread from beginning to end, because it perfectly fits the description of what you feel when you watch this movie. And another thing that I think is quite remarkable about this movie is the fact that this movie took 4 years to make. You know, that takes a lot of dedication and a lot of discipline, the type of discipline that I don't have. You know, the director used his own dog, Indy, for the film, so it really helped. But, you know, it took him 4 years to make this movie, probably like raising money and also training his dog and be able to get the shots he needed. But that's a lot of dedication, 4 years. It really is. But I do think in the end it all paid off, because you have this very special little film. Also, this movie only cost $750,000. And the running time is not long for this movie either. The runtime for this film is just an hour and 13 minutes long. But even though it's only an hour and 13 minutes long, this movie really did pack a punch. It really is a special little film. You know, I didn't think it was outstaying its welcome. It just was the perfect length of a movie where there was barely any dialogue and you're watching a dog sniff around a spooky home, encountering like a rather creepy like entity or entities. It's actually quite remarkable that this movie did what it did in its short time span. Well, that is the movie Good Boy. And honestly, I really did like this movie a lot. I really did. I understand this movie is not for everyone. You know, there's going to be these long takes where there's no dialogue and all you're doing is just seeing this dog just sniff around the spooky home. But I think this movie is something special. It's really unique. Honestly, I'm very excited to see what Ben Leonberg does next, because this movie, it took a lot of dedication, a lot of discipline to make this film. And I feel like if he took all that energy that he had, that he like put into making this movie, and he did something with like a serious, like a regular horror movie budget with like a great cast, like a great cast of actors, I think he would make something special. I'm actually looking forward to seeing what he does next. So if you've never seen this movie before, I'd say stop the video and just go right now, march to wherever and watch it. And if you have already seen it, I mean, the movie's only an hour and 13 minutes long, so, I don't know, you watch it again. Because it really is a fun, special little movie, and I have complete respect for the director of this movie, and I really can't wait to see what he comes up with next for his next feature-length film, because, this one really was something special. Bye.